Let's talk about the subconscious mind and how it gets programmed and what's happening anyway. Because it's an important piece. The subconscious mind is running the show about 95% of the time, where our conscious mind is only responsible for about 5% of what's going on inside of us. That's huge, right? 95% are these subconscious programmed beliefs. And unfortunately, most of our programming is negative. Most of our programming is based in fear, and our conditioning is based in other people's ideas about life. They're not even our own. And this is why so many adults are walking around feeling disconnected, distorted. They don't know who they are. They don't know what their real nature is because they haven't been given an opportunity to experience it for most of their life. Our subconscious mind gets programmed within the first approximately 7 years of our life. And that's because at that time, we're little sponges. We're just open, we're taking everything in. We're learning, we're mimicking, we're receiving, we're hearing, we're sensing, we're feeling. All of that comes in as conditioning, all of that comes in as programming. And for those first 7 years of our life, we're in the theta brainwave state the majority of the time. And that brainwave state is very receptive to suggestion and to programming. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. However, we get programmed and it's like those old cassette tapes. Do you remember those? I know some of you do. So the old cassette tapes that would play music or any kind of sound had a neutral tape. It was just blank before something got recorded onto it. And then you'd put the tape cassette into the cassette player, press play, and what would you get back? You'd get back whatever was recorded onto it. And it would be silly for us to think that, we could put in our Duran Duran tape and listen to it and play it. And it would be strange to think that we would hear anything other than Duran Duran on that tape, because that's what's on that tape. If we want to listen to Cyndi Lauper, we have to do what? Press pause, stop, eject, take that cassette tape out, get the Cyndi Lauper one, and put Cyndi Lauper in. And that's the only way we're going to hear something different. That's the only way that we'll have an experience of Cyndi Lauper is if we have the Cyndi Lauper tape in the player. Make sense? In the same way, our mind is the same. We have these recorded programs that were established at a very young age. And 95% of our day, our life, is the programming. It's those old tapes just playing out. And then it becomes frustrating as adults because we somehow don't feel like we're living in our true nature. We don't feel like we're having the life that we thought we'd have. Things aren't going the way we thought they would. Consciously we might say, I want to be abundant, I want to be healthy, I want to be successful. But then it's like, why am I trying so hard and none of these things are coming into fruition? This isn't my experience. And most of that is because of our deeper subconscious programming. So we have to take out the program and come to that neutral place before we put in the new programming. Does that make sense? In some ways, it's very simplistic. And we know that, and science is discovering that the subconscious mind, it does not know if something happened yesterday or 30 years ago. It's not in relationship to time. It simply records things and then plays it back. So say you had an argument with someone 25 years ago, and you haven't seen them in that amount of time, and then you see them, the subconscious mind is going to take you right back into that reaction response time. There's benefits to this too, right? Like if we learn to walk or ride a bicycle or do a dance move, we don't have to relearn the walking, the bicycling every single day. That's recorded inside of us and it's easily accessed because it's just there. We've learned it once and it just keeps playing out. Where it becomes problematical is that so much of the subconscious programming is negative. And this happens at a young age, between those ages of 1 and 7, when we're so receptive, when we're so open, when we're like these little sponges, and different instances happen, different experiences happen, and we make things up about ourselves. So say our parent gives us some markers, and we're all excited about our markers, and our mom goes to receive a phone call, and we're just feeling happy with our new markers and creative, and so we start drawing with our markers. And we are coloring away, and then our mom comes back in the room after her phone call and screams at us. Because what happened was we took those markers and started coloring on the wall, right? As kids might do. We didn't realize that that was a problem. And we're so proud of our art masterpiece that we've created, and the response is mother coming in and shrieking and maybe yelling or getting frustrated, or what are you doing? Oh my God, I can't believe you did this. And in that instant, we're gonna make up something about us. Oh, I did something wrong. I shouldn't be creative. I shouldn't be artistic. Or we make up these stories because as a child, we are not going to project something onto our parent or caregiver. We'll invert it and make it that we are the problem. It's a survival technique that's just naturally kind of inherent within us because we need our parents for survival. They're our whole world, essentially, or whoever our caregiver might be. It's our universe. So we're not going to look at them and be like, oh, mom's upset because I drew on the wall and she just got the living room walls painted and it cost her a whole lot of money. We're not thinking like that. That's not our reality as a child. We have no concept of money and the cost of things and how hard our parents worked to get the living room walls painted. We're just living our life and coloring on the walls. We're just living without the filters and the programming and the conditioning until something happens that doesn't feel good, and so we make something up about ourselves. And it can be really subtle things, right? Like in that example, it's sort of a lighthearted example. It's not a big trauma, but it feels like a trauma to a youngster, right? Where we're getting scolded, or maybe we don't even know why. It's very confusing. Like, I don't even know what I did wrong. It doesn't make any sense to the young child. All they know is that they were having fun a moment ago and expressing and playing, and then it's all shut down and they're in trouble, and mom's screaming and getting pulled out of the living room and into the bath, who knows, right? So these things happen a lot in our childhood, lots of different experiences, and some of them we're going to make up negative beliefs about ourselves. And this is how it develops. And after working with so many people over the years and doing this deeper excavation of this belief work and looking at what our misperceptions of ourself and our reality are, what I've come to see in others and in my own life, that in so many people, almost everyone I've ever worked with, there's some seed belief around worthiness, about not being worthy, about not deserving. So imagine 95% of our energy going to that. Not consciously, but in the background, that we're marinating in this vibration, in this belief of, I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving. And so some people in their life might take that and kind of buck up against it and do everything in their life to prove how worthy they are, to prove that they're worthy of love or attention or recognition or money, whatever it might be. So it might externally look like, wow, that person has it all together and they're so successful. But behind the scenes, they still might be feeling like the biggest failure ever. Because the outer is never going to satisfy that misperception, that misbelief. Until we can get to the root of that and excavate that, dissolve that energetic pattern and that belief system, then our behaviors will be connected to and reflective of the subconscious, not the conscious, smart adult that is like, I am successful, I am worthy of love, I love myself. We can say all these things all day long, but until we shift things on the deeper levels, we're going to keep bumping up against ourself, and we might not even know why. We might not even know why we can't seem to get ahead, why we can't seem to love ourselves, why we can't seem to accept our body, why we can't seem to feel good or grateful despite everything externally looking pretty wonderful. And this can be very painful in our human experience and very confusing. So how do we do it? Okay, so a lot of science is happening now in neuropsychology. A lot of science is happening around quantum physics, and this is all interrelated. There's a man by the name of Dr. Bruce Lipton, and he talks about 3 main ways to reprogram the subconscious. 1, he says, is through hypnosis. 2 is through repetition. So this is where affirmation can work. But it's not just a mental affirmation. It has to be affirmation connected to a feeling state. And that's why the exercise in the previous video around finding a better feeling thought connects us into a certain vibration, and then we can level up that vibration step by step by step. The best time to practice affirmation is when we're really feeling good. So we can amplify that and anchor it in. And it's true, like we can be in that place of like, I am healthy and joyful. And we keep amplifying that. However, a lot of people aren't feeling that way, and they're wanting to and maybe doing the best that they can to repeat the affirmation, and they're feeling like, God, I just can't get there. It seems so far-fetched. It seems so out of my reality right now. That's when the affirmation isn't going to have a lot of power unless it was repeated thousands and thousands of times a day, because it has to be, in Ayurveda, I've taught you that the medicine has to be stronger than the dis-ease. So if 95% of our programming is that subconscious and that's running the show of our life, imagine all those thoughts, 80, 90,000 thoughts a day, how many of those would have to be positive, uplifting, would have to go against the negative programming? It's a lot, right? So it's possible, and I totally encourage you to be mindful moment to moment of what thoughts are you letting by the screen of your mind, and to be very diligent around the observation of that and the redirection of those. So if you catch yourself thinking, oh, I'm such an idiot, stop. And you can even say that, stop. And then you need to put in, Rick Hansen, who's done a lot of study on neuropsychology, you need to, for every 1 negative belief, you need 5 positives. Okay, so that's the medicine being stronger than the dis-ease. 1 negative belief, you need to come back with 5 positive beliefs, affirmations, to counter the power of that 1 negative. The third way that Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about how we reprogram the subconscious is through energy psychology. And this is why I absolutely love doing the work with my clients and also sharing with you the ThetaHealing, because this is a form of energy psychology, and all of the energy medicine work that I do. I see that that's the piece that really amplifies one's Ayurvedic practice. So included in this program, I have some ThetaHealing meditation there for you that you can listen to and repeat daily. And this is going to be a wonderful way to support in the reprogramming. Also, from yoga, we know the practice of Yoga Nidra. And Yoga Nidra uses the same perspective that as we go into this deep relaxed state, we travel through that theta brainwave state, and in that moment, that's where we plant the seed of sankalpa in the theta brainwave state, so that we're planting the seed and it's fertile in that state. You can also do this before you go to bed. So as you're drifting off to sleep, begin to feel into the state that you would like to create, and you can generate this just lying in bed through your imagination, through your memory. So if you want more peace, then start to imagine, how does it feel to feel peaceful? And just through your thought alone, through your imagination, through your creativity, you begin to generate that energetic stance, that energetic signature of peace. And right before, as you drift off to sleep, and first thing when you wake up in the morning, these are the very fertile times to do the reprogramming of our own subconscious. We're most receptive in those times. And that's why it's so important that your first state of consciousness in the day And I'd given this example earlier in the course of today is a great day. You just start training yourself to say that, or whatever affirmation, sankalpa, or mantra feels most life affirming to you. But if your first thought in the day is, oh God, not another Wednesday, I have to blah, 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 blah. You've missed that opportunity to plant that seed, to grow that energy frequency within you in a really easy way. So it's a practice, and what it takes is us being more aware of the programming, taking out that cassette tape. Oh, I actually don't want to be thinking that because it feels crappy to feel that. This is where the work of Byron Katie comes in. Is it true? How do you feel when you think that thought? Where does it show up in your body? What kind of stress does that create? And then you go, well, what thought do I want to be thinking? What would be a better feeling thought? Let me put that tape in. Oh, I feel some relief in that. So sometimes the thought might be, this too shall pass. And that feels like a relief. That feels like, oh, that's true. And I can buy into that. And my body relaxes when I think that, because I know that this is just a moment in my life experience. It's not who I am. It's not my whole experience, and that I am bigger than any obstacle. So the practice is to start getting more creative. It's about creation, and children are so wonderful at being creative. They make up worlds inside their mind constantly, and then we've forgotten how to do that. So as adults, give yourself permission to play in the mind, to create in the mind. The conditioning might be, oh, don't be silly. That's not possible. It's like, whose voice is that, right? Was that a school teacher? Was that a parent? Where does that come from? It came from somebody who stopped believing. It came from someone who stopped believing in their power of creation because perhaps they were never told, they were never empowered that they create their reality through how they relate to their reality. We don't always get control over what's happening in our life experience, but our response, our perception, and our reaction to it is completely our own. I love the line from the book A Course in Miracles that says, we're never upset for the reason we think we are. We are never upset for the reason we think we are. And I interpret that as, when we're upset, it is our programming that has been triggered. We've been triggered in a way that takes us out of presence, that takes us either into past, future. And so we're upset because our protective personality feels threatened in some way. So it's not, the truth of us can't be threatened. Our prakriti, our natural state, we cannot be threatened when we're in our vertical, when we're in our natural state. But when we're living out of the protective personalities and our strategies, everything can feel like a threat. Life can feel threatening. It can feel very uncomfortable because we're not in alignment with source energy and with the truth. We're buying into a belief that we made up about ourselves, maybe that even someone told us about ourselves, that wasn't true, that was based in fear, that was based in negativity, that was based in someone else's projection perhaps. And that creates contraction, that creates dis-ease. That's the proverbial kink in the garden hose. So our work as conscious adults is to continue to bring the consciousness into every part of ourself that it is lacking. And where we have symptoms or disease is where we're being called upon to look. So do you get tightness in your shoulders all the time, or do you have digestive issues, or are you having problems reproductively or with your sleep? This is all information and doorways into deeper aspects of our psyche and our being, and how we have ignored parts of ourselves that are yearning, that are so desperately wanting to be seen, to be healed, and to be welcomed back into wholeness, so that we stop having to cut off parts of ourselves. Oh, I'm ashamed of this. Oh, I don't want people to see that part of me. Oh, I don't want to show this. And that takes a lot of energy to keep all those parts down. It takes a lot of energy to continue to live out of a mask, out of an illusion. That's exhausting, and this is why so many people are exhausted, because we have this idea that we have to put on the face that society, that culture, that our family, that our partner, that whoever who we think wants to see that version of ourselves. And it's not true. And then we perpetuate that in our culture, right? How are you? Fine. Everything's fine. Like, how many times have you either had that response or other people have responded in that way, and you kind of were like, no, it's not. It's really not. But when we walk out into the world, it's like we're only allowed to kind of be in this monodimensional state. Happy, content. Or maybe you hang out with a bunch of people who the culture is to complain or to gossip. So we have all these kind of subcultures, subways of relating as well that are very socially acceptable and welcomed. It can be very uncomfortable for a complainer to not have other people joining in and complaining. It's like we want to feed off each other, and then we get everyone complaining, and then we're all stewing in this negative soup together. And then that energy is what permeates out into our environment, into our society, into our families. So when we take radical responsibility, 100% responsibility for what is going on inside of us, if we have an upset, this is our spiritual practice. We can turn towards it and say, well, what if I just for a moment played around with that idea of whatever I'm upset about isn't really what I'm upset about. What if there was some truth to that? How might I explore looking at what's underneath my upset? Am I feeling disrespected? Am I feeling out of alignment with my truth? What is really going on that makes the trigger feel so real? Or what makes it feel really easy to blame out there, to point the fingers? That person made me feel this way. No one can make you feel anything. We feel what's inside of us. People may trigger us, but they're triggering something that's already inside. So if there is no anger inside of you, it can't be triggered. It's not there. If there's no rage inside of you, it can't be triggered. If there's no depression inside of you, it can't be triggered. But we have all of these experiences inside of us. We do as humans. It's not a bad thing. But as we get triggered and as life brings us certain people or experiences or situations, we can look a little bit deeper and bring more loving to ourselves, more care and compassion, and seeing that the part of ourself that is struggling, that is fearful, that is not having their needs met, has been there for so long, has been there since that young childhood. So we need to tend to that inner child in us that is screaming for love or support or to be seen or to be heard in a way that they want to be seen, the way that you wanted to be seen. Maybe no one knew that you needed to be acknowledged or seen in that way, and it didn't come in the way that you would have liked for it to come. And now as adults, we get to bring that for ourselves. We get to affirm ourselves, recognize ourselves, validate ourselves. And if we're waiting for it to happen out there through social media, through family, through our children or partners, we're caught up in that same loop that we have been in likely for most of our life. So the freedom lies in leaning into the discomfort of what is creating suffering and how can I begin to influence that on my own. So either through something like hypnotherapy, the repetition, the observation of the thoughts, or the energy psychology, which is what we're doing in this course. This course is the understanding, the application of energy psychology. This is the essence of yoga and of Ayurveda.